story is that that puppy saw me and dog at the park and jumped off the second story patio.
Okay, let's go.
Drop!
What's going on, man? It's your boy Big A. I'm back in here like I left my wallet and keys, man, and my partner Dre. What to do, man? How you doing?
Always great, never bad, big dog. Always great, never bad. And we got a special guest today. Uh, Sister Sarah, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Sarah. I live out in Washington State with my two dogs, and I'm super excited to be here today. I've been following Samurai Kennels mostly on TikTok, and I'm excited to get to kind of meet everybody for a little while.
Cool. So, speaking of the Digital Dog Show, you competed in it, and you're one of the few ladies that actually came out and kind of got involved in the mix in a kind of guy-dominated internet era, right? So can you tell us about your perspective on that and just kind of your experiences?
So I knew nothing when I first took our dog in as a puppy. I entered that show, and even I think since I entered it that round, a little bit of humbling. Just my dog wasn't in the best shape. I've worked really hard to kind of sit down and really decide where I want her body score conditioning to be at.
Right.
She was coming out of a false pregnancy then. I'm pretty much on my own. I don't have, out here in Washington, the community is just really different. There's not a lot of people who have anybody that they know that has a true dog that is from ADBA or even knows what the bloodlines are. It's a lot of rescue dogs and bully mixes. So all of our conditioning was being done in a apartment shared dog yard space where I was just kind of sectioning us off for 2 to 4 hours a day and taking as much advantage of it as I could. But even since then, I think what I would submit now versus then, I've grown up a lot and seen just kind of where her faults were back then to where we are today. And the access, I don't think that I even back then was utilizing all the resources because being a woman is one thing. Also being a woman so far removed from an environment where there is a lot of people that have these dogs or have seen these dogs is a whole other side of it too.
Right. And you got into training. What got you into training?
So I had my poodle mix that God, I wish I could even tell you. Must have been 2019. And then the pandemic hit and I actually had a stroke. I had what's called a silent stroke in sometime of the summer of 2020. I got married January 2020. The pandemic hit. I was home. I had a stroke and I had this dog that was just, not even one yet. And I felt like a total failure. I was super worried. I know poodles are high intelligent dogs. I felt like I was going to fail her. And so, coming out of that for myself as someone who has chronic health conditions, I just was like, okay, what's something we can do? And it started with just a little bit of nose work, teaching her how to use her nose in the house, how to find a treat. And then it was, finding it in a different room. And then it was finding it in the apartment complex stairwell. And then it was a little bit in the parking lot. And so it really was this gradual thing where it accepted me having limitations, but also got my dog to use her brain and have some environmental and, interaction and not be bored and a restless puppy that deserved a lot more than I felt like I could offer her. And then I just fell in love with it. It gave me my identity back. It gave me a huge sense of confidence and some freedom. I was able to rebuild my body, capabilities doing that. And so that was kind of it for me. After that, I was like, oh my God, this is such a cool gift to be able to do with a dog and the human side of it.
Yeah. And the bond kind of became a little stronger too, throughout the process. So when you got your pet, what did you notice in the difference?
Just happened to, stumble across it, you know what I'm saying? Turned out to be popping too.
Yeah, okay. Now
So I was home for 3 years, and I
Mhm.
get a text from a friend, and they
Mhm.
were like, and so, like I said, Washington's a very, I'm half Mexican. My husband is Mexican. The area we lived in is a very white area, but it's been very heavily impacted by the illicit drugs on the street. And so we live in kind
Right.
of a dynamic neighborhood, not the best area. Like, you wouldn't want your kids around it unattended. But if
Right.
you are a decent human being and you are nice to one another, you're going to be fine. And so, there was a lot of different types of people that live there. And I get a
Mhm.
text and I hear, there's a puppy on a patio and it's crying.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, man, like, it's probably nothing. And then I go outside, and sure enough, there's this really small puppy on a patio,
Mhm.
and she's on the second story. And we don't get very hot out here in Washington, but this summer it was like, I think, 90 degrees, somewhat, going higher. And I said, okay, well, it's somebody's dog, it is what it is. But I was trading with Lonnie the poodle, and so I was outside every day, and it was a
Right.
weekend, it was a holiday, and all of a sudden I noticed this dog's been on the patio for 3 days, 4 days, crying, getting more lethargic, with no shelter, no food, no water, sitting in the sun. And I'm calling animal control, all this stuff. So the official story is that that puppy saw me and dog at the park and jumped off the second story patio.
Mm.
Technically,
Wow.
which is
Right.
not what happened, but that's the cover story.
Mhm.
So when the owner found out that we had the dog, I said, look, you can't do this out here. You're from a different neighborhood. You are somebody that's already going to be under a little bit more like critical eye here. I'll
Yeah.
watch the dog. I'll babysit.
Yeah.
She wasn't in great shape. She wasn't vaccinated. She was rolling her paws over. She wasn't on a good food. She had a UTI. She was pretty, heavy on her resource guarding. And I have a 63-year-old neighbor who became my best friend. She's done wildlife rehab, rescue. She's a fur mommy through and through, but a badass that like rolls her own cigarettes and, just
Yeah.
funny lady. And she said, oh, you can totally do this. Take the dog, when he offered.
Mhm.
Um, Yep, that was. I said, okay. We put an offer on the dog because he was going to get rid of her to be bred. And about a week later, that was when I realized I had no clue what I had just gotten myself into.
Got him! Got him!
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a tie out with a cinder block. We'd put 3 or 4 of the other kind of community adult dogs out on.
Mhm.
And I had put this puppy on, and I look over, and this 15-pound dog is pulling a cinder block across the yard.
That's what I'm talking
Right.
about.
Yeah. 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 Yep. That's kind of what got me into like weight training myself. I used to do that to, hold my dog still in the backyard for a little while, and before you know it, they dragging their weight around like it's nothing.
Yep.
So yeah. Yeah.
And so for her, it was, I, by that time, had kind of gotten back to like a place where physically I felt like I could handle a little bit more. And it just became, I don't know, almost like symbolic for me because I was really home alone. Um,
Yeah.
my husband at the time was providing by going to work, but it was really just us. I was at risk for the pandemic, making me a lot sicker. So we didn't really
Yeah.
have family or anybody around. And so the poodle was kind of like this, that dog is my soul dog. I never could have imagined, this very poor decision to get a doodle resulting in what it did. But
Hmm.
this dog was, I mean, like, saved my life in more ways than one. Is one of the coolest dogs. She has natural alerts for people having low blood sugar or high blood sugar. So she was just like this thing that at the time was like, okay, you can't just give up. Let's go outside. Let's get our life back. And then the
Right.
pit bull coming in was like after I had kind of gotten through that period of isolation, I had a little bit of like interaction with my neighbors, and I was living in an apartment. And for me, you know, a lot of people think it's crazy that I knew all my neighbors, but I said, that's what got me through. And so when we
Right.
had the pit bull, it was this period where I was like, okay, I got through it. Now I got to get strong, because the mind's one thing and the body's another. So Renata was
Right.
this like symbolic moment of like, all right, now we got to kind of get the weight up, get, you know, the muscle going, and figure out how to work this dog, with allowing that I might have some physical accommodations that I need to make, but that so she can still get worked.
Right. Right. And so, it as far as her temperament and what's her personality?
When we took her in, it was kind of that classic, like, God, I look back at videos now and I laugh because I can
Hmm.
see the things that I didn't know what they were.
Right.
Her,
Right.
you know, that
Right.
murder scream at her sister dog for grabbing a toy, and, you know, stuff that today I'm like, yeah, cool. Probably should have de-escalated that or intervened earlier. I
Yeah.
definitely didn't give them free reign. I'm glad I knew at least that side. The dogs were
Okay.
not really dogs that I would ever leave unattended together, and it was very structured. So we did no play in the. I mean, we lived in a 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom apartment. There was no
Yeah.
playing. That was a set rule early. They got fed separately. Um, and then the structure was, once they kind of get up and we're going, it was like, okay, we're going to go outside, we're going to go to the dog park, and we're going to get something in. And we started with like just basic obedience. Renata really needed the socializing side.
Right.
She was pretty scared. Everything's like, not scared. I don't know. I
Get
think
it.
bordered on that like reactive side, because she was really
Yeah.
alone.
Yes.
And so we did a lot of just kind of like basics. There's a ton of people, there's a ton of dogs. So there was a lot of factors to navigate. And I definitely started realizing like, okay, something else, like, yeah, this dog is something else, because there was
Right.
dogs all around, and there was certain dogs she couldn't, you know, and it's a like a private but public to the tenant's yard. And so, you know, I realized pretty quick, like, okay, Lonnie can play with any dog that comes in, but Renata cannot. And
Hmm.
people just kept telling me, oh, she'll grow out of it, it's how you train her. I'm like, okay, that sounds like a crock, because I'm out here with her 4 hours a day, and
Yeah.
I'm not instigating her and, you know, poking at her so she's angry at these dogs.
Right.
um and so I started setting boundaries. Like, my dog is not, like, if you're not going to respect a slow intro, and if it's a female dog or a same age or big or whatever it was that set my dog off, they don't need to hang out. That means that you don't respect boundaries, and this is going to set us up for, you know, bad things to happen. And so
Yeah.
it showed pretty quick. I'll say that, like, a lot quicker than I ever would have anticipated.
At what age? What age would you say?
Looking back at the videos, as soon as we got her, so she was probably 16 weeks when we ended up with her. And I
Okay.
was able to see, looking back at the videos, like, all that, you know, the stiff body language,
Hmm.
the way she would vocalize even to Lonnie, some of the dogs that, you know, would sniff around, because it was kind of a little group of us that were home, a lot of older neighbors, and then a few younger that would pop in through the end of the day. But
Yeah.
by the time that she got to about 6 months, I was like, okay, yep, nope, we're
Yeah.
not doing that. By her first heat, I was like, absolutely not. Like, I'm not setting my dog up. And even if I think she could do okay with the proper intro and the perfect conditions, if anything does happen, it's going to fall on my shoulders and my dog.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of like chaining the gate closed, and then saying, like, if you want to come in, we're going to come out. But it was definitely something that I felt like kind of empowered me to say, like, look, not all dogs should even be playing together anyways. So it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I want to interject on that one, because one of the things I wanted to ask you is, I was kind of indoctrinated early on into like understanding the characteristics of this breed. What reference materials, or like, once you realized the difference in the personalities, how did you kind of educate yourself to prepare yourself better for just dealing with the different personalities of different breeds?
I Susie was this, and so Susie's my neighbor in her 60s. You know, she said, "Oh, I had these dogs," and there was one moment. and I couldn't have told you what the dogs were. Oh my God. Renata has that scream, that murder scream that those dogs do.
Yeah.
And she became obsessed with the branches in the tree at the
Yeah.
dog park. And
Yeah.
Susie lived close to the park. And one day she just looks at me and she goes, "What the fuck is that?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "What is that?" And I was like, "You told me I could do this. What do you mean? What is that?"
Yeah.
And she goes, "Okay, well, I think we may have had some different dogs." And I think,
Oh no!
and I think in that moment, I was like, oh my God, I just took this lady's advice that I could handle this. And now she doesn't even know.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay.
Blind leading the blind.
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
like, awesome. And so I was posting a little bit on TikTok, and I ended up just in a few. I said, okay, you know what? I don't have a lot of resources out here, so I've got to dive into what I have. And Maria Miller, Andrea, her last name I think starts with an F. Steph's dogs out of Canada, Mason's canine, and then I have a few like Malaya and a few that are kind of in the Pacific Northwest area. I just was like, okay, these dogs look more like what I'm looking at in front of me than all these, Humane Society poster dogs and the fur
Right.
moms. Like, this looks a little bit more like what the dog in front of me looks like. And so I just kind of started diving in on TikTok and trying to find accounts and reading as much as I could, because it was pretty quick that this dog was not going to be like the couch potato baby with the PJs.
Yeah. That people promote. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. So what got you into Trump to the show, bringing you to stepping into the show ring?
I think for me, I really, this is so weird. I'm trying to think of a diplomatic way to say this. Um, as someone that has like chronic illness, there's
Mhm.
only so many things in my life that I can control. Like when I had the stroke, that was the biggest, and I'm 31. I got diagnosed with my genetic condition at like 10. Um, that stroke was for me this moment of like, oh wow, this can really happen and it can come out of nowhere. Um,
Yeah.
and so I was looking at this dog, and so when she pulled the cinder block, she actually ended up ripping a muscle in her front arm.
Hmm.
And she was also coming back from, this improper nutrition before we had her, where her legs were rolling over. And
Right.
I just remember kind of looking at her and being like, God, I have lived my whole life with some type of pain, and I can't subject this dog to that. That just doesn't feel fair. And
Hmm.
Lonnie's, a dog that's been very active. She uses her mind. Lonnie's going to be 5 or 6. Yeah, I think she'll be 6 this year. And the vets are like, you could tell me Lonnie's 2 and I would believe you. So we got
Right.
lucky with her. But with Renata, I was like, her weight was all over the place. She hit her first heat cycle, and she had that dog, God, has had a false pregnancy after every one of her heats.
Wow.
And so I just remember looking at her and being like, this dog is not doing her best. And I made a promise when I took this dog that I was going to give her, we got her on the best insurance. And so I felt like I owed it to her to figure out what I was missing. And that was an aspect of her physical training, not just the like the socialized training and the obedience training, but the actual, how can I take care of her body and her muscles so that this dog isn't living a life of pain, because I know what that's like, and it's just not something I want to subject my dog to.
Right. Right. So they got you um to basically just to get her out there and do as much as you can with it, which pretty much on the back end was helping you too, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
definitely.
the digital dog show came up, and I felt like, I said, okay, well, this would be a good, I'm a very like visual person. I said, okay, well,
Mhm.
let's compare the slides. Let's see what she looked like 3 months ago.
Uh-huh.
To when we can, and then it had a goal. I'm a very like goal orientated person. So I was like, okay, you have
Right.
a timeline from all the research. It's not like if I do this with my dog at this pace that I'm gonna, injure her or hurt her or get her
Right.
malnourished or anything. There's a rate that I can do this at. And so it was kind of a goal and like a stepping stone for me. I was like, okay, this is a good pace. I have a good understanding. Let's see what it looks like if I do this and what happens in this time period.
Yeah. Yeah. And man, that was a beautiful thing because, and then you got to do it from your household and, uh yeah, showcase the dog and you also learned a lot, through the process. Um so how old is she now?
She'll have her third birthday in
Okay.
April. That sounds right. Yes, we're third
Yeah.
birthday in April.
Nice.
Yeah. So she's at the maturing stage now.
Yeah.
What's the difference between then and now?
Context. I've stood on. So there's a guy out actually where I do live that does participate in the ADBA community, and he breeds. His name is Tony Waters, and he has I think his lines are Kerrigan. He and I met. We did some weight pulling with Renata and Lonnie and my friend who has a Belgian Malinois. And
Hmm.
he goes, we had the Belgian out and Renata out, and they were playing with a boat float in the tree. And he goes,
Hmm.
my God, my dogs could never do that. They would kill each other. And I was like,
Right.
well, let's be clear. I would never leave them. Like,
Yeah.
we've done this for months, really slowly. We've kept a huge control. We've taken breaks. I've rewarded breaks. I've rewarded contact. I've rewarded the things that I wanted. Um, I think if left to her own devices, that'd be a whole other side. I think today I see most that is a bond that she defers to me on is that context trust.
Okay.
We board her now because I have to work, and she looks to me to like be like, okay, this isn't my space. This isn't my yard. I'm not happy about this.
Yeah.
But she looks to me to say, okay, either mom's going to tell me that I just need to do what is asked and expected of me, or yeah, okay, something's going on, because we have had instances where I had to learn to also trust her. I had to give my dog the respect that there are some instincts that I can't pick up on, and I needed to trust
Yeah.
her. And so by giving kind of that give and take, I felt like we reached this place in adulthood for her that looks like context. We go to the
Yeah.
vet and a golden retriever goes nuts on her, and I feel every one of those muscles go up. I see the hair, I see her wanting to, but then she's like, all right, I'm going to look to you and you're going to tell me, like, leave it alone, or you're going to, you know, or you're not
Yeah.
going to. And I'm going to start, reacting.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
So my follow up question to that is, after getting kind of surprised with all that comes with having American Pit Bull Terrier, what are your thoughts on just these random people just getting these dogs? Do you think this is the dog for anybody, or what would be your level of guidance to a new person getting into the breed?
You know, so the background on her is that she was owned by someone from Chicago who probably very likely had seen more of these dogs in this arena than I ever will living out here. Um,
Right.
he ended up working 16 hours a day, not having support, and kind of being in over his head. And, one of the only times he did come to visit her when we were housing her, he saw her cuddled up with me, and he goes,
Hmm.
what the hell have you done to my dog? And I was like, what are you talking about? It's a puppy. Like, this is a dog that was food insecure, house insecure, was peeing in her bedding. Like, those are all things that aren't, I don't care what kind of dog it is. None of those things are going to produce a confident and happy dog. And he's like, well, she's a guard dog. I'll never forget him saying that she was supposed to be a guard dog. And even with the minimal of what I knew that in order for a dog to be stable, to do any job you're asking of it, it has to come from a really big place of respect between the two of you and expectation setting. And that was kind of when it hit me that maybe no matter if he had more or he'd seen these dogs and I just had more book education on it, that maybe for this specific dog in this specific day, this was not going to be the match for this dog to succeed. And
Right.
you know, so we lived in an apartment, there was all these dogs, and all these people would see a dog flag. I mean, Renata would be flagging her tail, muscles tense, doing that one specific noise where it's like oh my god, can't even, where they just like guttural in their throat. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh my god, she just wants to play. And I look at them and I'm like,
Are you dumb?
what? I don't think you should have a dog. And any dog. I don't think you should have any type of dog if you're able to look at that and see a dog that wants to play. And we lived there, and there were people that had bullies and had mixes, and you know, and the biggest thing that I tell people is when I went to go do the weight pulling with Tony, and he mentioned that about his dogs and how he keeps his dogs and the policy that he has still today about placing puppies. I think people, it's a really high level of cognitive dissonance because there's these people who are going to look at any of the dogs that have that shaped head or muscles or whatever, and they're going to say all these dogs are capable of killing people, they're bad, nobody should have them. And then there's going to be the people who also will refuse to acknowledge when you say the breed at its core, when it's being done properly and when it's being respected, are supposed to be stewarded by people that understand that. And for us, we understand what that means. That means keeping them not to have their own decision making at all times, controlling their environment, not giving them free reign of a house, utilizing tie outs or, you know, yard spots or kennels or whatever, but not giving these dogs free reign, not giving them free reign with your kids until everybody has a really heavy understanding of what these dogs are capable of. Because the people that steward these dogs with respect understand that if these dogs do bite people, that typically within the breed and the community, that has a way different consequence than what the general public is reading in the headlines, where these dogs are getting placed by inappropriate breeders that don't respect them and don't have contracts and don't follow up with them and don't keep in mind their behavior. And these dogs go and kill people because they're poor genetics and they're poorly bred and they're mixes with no actual education to the families, versus people that have a respect for them and say, okay, if my dog does ABC, I take actions of DEF.
Right.
I need another one. I'ma roll it up and I light it up. I need another one. So put some more in my cup. I just need another one. I'ma roll it up and I light it up. I need another one. So put some more in my cup. I just need another one. 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 I just need another one.